Show on 702, your number one news and talk station.
Africa Business Report this evening, and we're talking about expats, expatriates, people who may be born in Europe or born in Australia, born in other parts of Africa, who come into South Africa in particular, but maybe expats are falling out of vogue in Africa. Is Africa falling out of vogue with expats? Is the volatility of currencies the thing that is turning a lot of people away? What does it mean for companies? Leon Ayo is the chief executive for Sub-Saharan Africa at Odgers Berndtson. Odgers Berndtson, if you've never had a call from them looking to headhunt you, are people who place executives in very big, important and high-paying jobs, roughly speaking.
Spot on.
There we go. As long as you've got your brand positioning absolutely right. What's happening in the world of expats? Because there was a time where companies were desperate for expat skills and the expats were willing to come, but things seem to have tapered off quite dramatically.
There certainly is a requirement for expat skills, but it's not quite as en vogue as it was. I think largely it's because it's become more expensive due to the depreciation of the rand. Often expats are paid in their home currencies back home and given living expenses here. So that obviously is quite expensive given where the rand is going. I think equally as well there are prohibitive labour laws, which mean visas are increasingly difficult. But expats still do want to come to South Africa and be involved in the Africa opportunity.
Now, we look at somebody like David Constable, for example, the man who's leaving Sasol, came back, massively controversial pay package when he was appointed because he had big, I think his kids were being put through private schools, and there was the dollar package. And as the rand depreciated, suddenly the CEO brought in from elsewhere in dollar terms is costing you in South Africa 40% more than when he was hired, say, a year or two ago.
I would say that certainly is challenging for an organisation. But if you look at the FTSE 100, for example, 35% of the FTSE 100 are actually foreign expatriates. If you look at 41% of the FTSE in London, 41% of them have spent 15 years working overseas. So what is the price of getting it wrong? Getting a CEO who cannot navigate international global markets. So I think the price of getting it wrong is far greater than what you might pay in compensation.
But in a politically charged environment like South Africa, where there is considerable pressure to promote local talent, particularly black African talent in South Africa, government is saying, hold on a second, surely we can grow our own.
Yeah, I think organisations that get it right, such as Pick and Pay, Clicks, Woolworths, all that have hired expats.
I was about to say, yes, all of whom have got foreign chief executives.
They do, but what they really ensure is that there is an exchange of skills. And if we look at Simon Susman, who early on in his career went off to London to spend time with Marks and Spencer's and came back to Woolworths, I think it's not just about expats coming into the country, it's about us sending our best South African talent to the world to develop skills in developed markets.
But if we want to do that, then there's got to be a quid pro quo.
Yeah.
We want to send our best talent outside to learn global skills. Do we not need to allow global skills into our market to learn the Africa story?
As an Englishman that's made this country his home and been here for the last 3 years, I certainly think you do. I think people that can be passionate about your local economy, the local challenges, and bring international experience are key. But I think we have to understand, as we have done at Odgers, is ensuring we do develop our own South African talent.
How many people, because you guys have got a lot of internationals who work within Odgers Berndtson, what percentage of your staff is South African versus global? Because you traverse this very interesting dynamic. You're looking for local talent to export, but you also want to import foreign talent here.
So interestingly, our firm was set up by a South African 50 years ago who set up the business in London. So went to St John's as a Joburger, proud Joburger, did his MBA in the UK.
Is that Mr. Berndtson?
That's Ian Odgers.
Ian Odgers, okay.
Odgers. Yeah. So actually we're 90% South African here locally, but if you go to our London office, you'll find over 40% are international. And working in London, which is an international headquarters, you need people with these linguistic skills that can reach out to the Brazilians, the Indians, and people on the African continent. We have Africans working in our London office as well.
Yeah, but one of the great drawbacks of so many expatriate executives is what happens to the spouse, whether it is the high-powered female executive who has a doctor husband or the other way around. So often, that medical professional can't get a visa to work here.
That's a great example. And it's a missed opportunity for South Africa. I live up in the People's Republic of Danefern, where there are many expats living there. And the amount of talented spouses, be it in the medical profession, education profession, that want to work but can't get visas. And what happens is they tend to go to Canada, to Australia, where they're going to be compensated well, but they're passionate about adding value here in South Africa. So what happens with the expat executive package then? They're often compensated for the fact that they have to provide for the family themselves, whereas in London, both spouses would be working.
So South Africa almost prices itself out of the market.
Yeah, I mean, that's an easy win. If there are skills that we require in this country, such as in the medical profession, let's make it easy for these people to work here.
I had a conversation with the Director General in the Department of Health the other day, and I said, it's a blimmin' disgrace. And she looked at me as if I'd said something terribly rude.
Yeah.
But it is a disgrace that you've got people who've worked in many jurisdictions, many parts of it. One example that comes to mind is a friend of the family who's worked in poor parts of London and who has seen afflictions that you might not find in South Africa, but also many that you would.
Yeah.
And has the skills and the ability to deliver a treatment option.
I mean, I think that could be addressed through legislation, and there's been some very sensible movements in terms of addressing visa complications recently. Up until this week, spouses would have to reapply for their visa in their home country. Now, when you're reapplying to extend your visa, you can do it in South Africa, because that causes a lot of disruption. If you're taking kids out of school, you're separating families, sending them to another continent to wait for an uncertain outcome, that means that people are more inclined to want to leave.
But that's you create no certainty.
Yeah.
And it's a case of if you've got an executive who's got a 5-year tenure, that 5-year tenure is coming to an end, but the kids are in grade 8 or whatever at school, everyone's having a great time. The company wants to re-employ the executive, and suddenly you've got to go through this period of great uncertainty while we sort out our admin.
Well, one of your colleagues on the morning show says South Africa's not for sissies, and I think you certainly have to embrace that sense of adventure when you come here. Unfortunately, navigating the bureaucracy is one of those key challenges that makes it harder.
Yeah, absolutely, but you call it a sense of adventure. It's disruptive.
It's hugely disruptive and hugely stressful. I've been through it myself, but I think I'm prepared to navigate that because I believe in the opportunity. And you mentioned schools. I mean, South Africa has a lot to offer for expats in terms of education, hospitals, lifestyle. It really is an exceptional quality of living.
One of your competitors, the Homecoming Revolution, it started out as a charity. They're very committed to bring the African diaspora home across the African continent. That is an opportunity also where you've got people who've gone to university at Harvard and some of the greatest universities in the world, many of whom are being tempted back. But then lots of African economies are struggling, and suddenly you get a dollar-based salary, and suddenly in rand terms you're getting 40% less than perhaps you would have if you'd stayed in the United States. People are making big decisions. Where is that opportunity?
We did some research, actually, with Andy's organisation, Yellowwood, looking at the Africa Talent Challenge. So we're all excited as international businesses about the great consumer market that Africa is becoming. And there's such a large number of well-educated North American, Western-educated Africans. The challenge is they often want to return on expat packages because they've been out the country for some time. I think an advantage of my organisation, Odgers Berndtson, we're in 29 countries around the world. We've got researchers in each corner of the world that can access this African talent. Because it's not one homogenous group. They don't all subscribe to the same social media outlets. So we have to track this talent. And when opportunities come up here in South Africa, in Rwanda, in Kenya, in Nigeria, we need to be able to reach out to them quickly. And increasingly, people are returning because of the Africa-rising good news story. They can see through some of the negativity and see the opportunity.
Are you finding that other African economies are more accepting of expat talent? Or is this sort of, I don't want to call it the sort of pressure against expats, because I'm not sure it's necessarily that strong, but expats going off the boil. Is it across the continent?
So South Africa is the most welcoming in terms of social environment to come into. It's a very, culturally it's very easy to come across. I've just been talking about Manchester United with your photographer outside.
Everybody on the African continent will talk about Manchester United.
So that's easy. Where it is more challenging is if you work in Kenya, Nigeria, Ghana, navigating the legislation, the bureaucracy, the visa rules is easier, and they are more open to doing business. South Africa is often more complex, and you'll find that South African companies based in South Africa operating in the continent will tell you the same thing as well.
Yeah, we don't do ourselves too many favours.
There are a few own goals occasionally.
Yes, they most certainly are. Then another football analogy. Leon Ayo, who is the Chief Executive for Sub-Saharan Africa at Odgers Berndtson.